Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I am AA Ron, and this is the Inclusive Dad Podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join me in exploring ways we can create a more inclusive world together. You are important, you matter, and you can make a difference. Today, my guest is Maria Chapman. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I am happy to be here.
Why don't you just start us off just telling me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, professionally, I work as a ghostwriter, but my background is in education.
Mhm.
I left the world of education in 2019 when I developed a neuromuscular condition and was medically retired. So I started writing at that time. I've been working as a ghostwriter since. And I actually just started a nonprofit called Journey to Success, where we help people who are disabled mid-career start businesses.
That's, that's great. Thank you for that. First question is, what is your definition of inclusion?
So it's funny. Well, coming from a teaching background, right?
Yep. Yep.
I'm looking at my brain is spinning through all of those educational definitions that
Yep.
we use. But really, what inclusion is providing a space where everyone can achieve what it is that makes them feel whole.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's different for everyone. So it's not
Yep.
about equal,
For sure.
right? It's about equity.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Yeah. My journey with inclusion started with my daughter, Cecilia. She's 22 and she qualifies multiple or severely multiply impaired. So under multiple categories, sent to a segregated classroom, and then found out kids were folding towels in like first grade. And I was like, yeah, why are we already not having her in classrooms? So just kind of found out about inclusion, went down that journey. So it's definitely, that's kind of where I started out on the inclusion piece. Now, I mean, realizing it involves a lot more pieces than just that part. So I understand you're defaulting to your educational experience in that for sure.
Yeah, well, and now, so my nonprofit is
Yep.
actually based off of a study that was done in New York. The Let me grab the name real quick of the person because that matters. I want to give credit. The study is called Inclusive Entrepreneurship,
Okay.
and it looked at how can we make entrepreneurship um, accessible to people
Right.
with disabilities. Gary Shaheen is the
Okay.
primary on that study. And so we based our programming off of both my experience, right,
Sure.
and his study. So
Yeah.
inclusivity plays a big role.
Yeah. Do you want to maybe go a little bit deeper into like your experience with what happened where you had to retire from teaching and then trying, figuring out your next steps and how that looked?
Yeah, sure. So I started having symptoms in 2018, but I sort of ignored them, pressed through because you're a teacher, you don't
Yeah.
take days off, right? And I was a weightlifter and a runner, and I started losing abilities. So the running kind of went first, and
Mhm.
then I started losing the ability to lift weights and had like a steady decline. Went from,
Mhm.
you know, pressing 50 pounds to 30 to 20 to not being able to lift a coffee cup some days.
Mhm.
And um, I kept working because teachers don't take days off. I took FMLA 2 days a week for the last month that I was able to work to see if I could spend some
Mhm.
extra time on medical searches and figure out what was going on with me. Um, I saw 12 different specialists in addition to my general practitioner, and
Mhm.
I heard a lot of, oh, it's anxiety, here's medication. And then November 8th 2019, I got out of bed and my legs didn't work, and um my husband was already at work. I called him, and before he got home my arms had stopped working, and then by the time we got to the hospital my jaw had stopped working. So I couldn't talk, I couldn't chew.
Mhm.
I was having trouble swallowing. They ruled out a stroke, sent me home 5 days later. I was able to walk with a walker at that point. If I was in the house, if I had left the house, I was wheelchair bound. And it took me another year and a half actually to get diagnoses. And the district put me on unpaid leave. And then when COVID hit and everybody was working remotely, by that point I was recovered enough that I was able to talk. I still had some trouble with my jaw. It would shake, it would tire out, but if I rested enough, then it was fine. And I said, well, I can work remotely. Let me come back to work. And they said no. So that was interesting. So during COVID, while everybody was working remotely, I wasn't allowed to. And so once I was medically retired from teaching, I did start looking for jobs. And all this time I was doing some freelance writing, low key here and there.
Sure.
And I applied for a bunch of jobs. The most memorable one was Scholastic, because I interviewed with them and I had all this curriculum development work and writing experience. So it was kind of a perfect fit from my skill set. And they offered me the position, and it was primarily remote. And there was one day a week that they wanted me to be in person in their New York City office. And at the time, that was not something I was capable of, traveling into the city on my own, so on and so forth. So I disclosed my disability after they made the offer. And then I had worked with the Job Accommodations Network to figure out appropriate accommodations for me. And so I presented those to the people at Scholastic, and they actually rescinded their offer.
Wow.
And, everyone thinks that employers can't do that, right? That's what everybody thinks.
Yep.
But with both the school district and Scholastic, there is a caveat that an employer can claim undue hardship. Like, it would be too much of a hardship for us to provide that accommodation. And that could be expense or whatever. In the school district, what they said to me is, well, if we give you one day off a week for your medical infusions, because I get IVIG infusions, if we do that for you, everyone's going to want a day off.
Right. Yeah.
And it's literally, so it was interesting to me that this institution I was in, right, the educational institution that preached inclusion, when it came down to it, they weren't worried about equity. They were worried about equality.
Yeah.
So I decided after that just to go full in on the writing career.
Sure.
See where it took me.
What led you to wanting starting the nonprofit, wanting to help other people?
So once the Teachers Retirement Board medically retired me, I was encouraged by my doctors to apply for Social Security. Now, teachers in Connecticut don't pay into Social Security, so I wasn't eligible for benefits, but they thought that I might be able to get some help with the medical costs, because at that point the medical costs were crippling my family. So I applied, and the Social Security Administration denied my claim. And when I got the letter, it said, if you have questions, call us. And I called, and I just, walk me through this. What's going on? And they said, well, we agree that you're too disabled to work in your current field in education, but we think you can work in some capacity. And I said, okay, I agree with you, actually. I've been doing freelance writing, but it's not it's not an income in any real way. Right. And I've applied for jobs, but this is what they're telling me. And I said, so what programs exist to train me and help me find a new job with my skill set? And the person on the phone actually laughed. He was like, wow. Oh, we don't do that. So there's this organization that is supposed to be helping people with disabilities. And it's like, oh no, either you get a check or you don't, or you get medical care or you don't. And that's the end of the story. And so at that point I said, okay, there's definitely a gap here. Right. And there are some other organizations that are doing work similar to what we're doing. a lot of it is in job placement, vocational rehab space.
Yep. Mhm.
Not a lot of it is on the entrepreneurial side of it.
Mhm.
And right now, about 70% of people with disabilities are not in the workforce at all.
Mhm.
And it's not because they don't want to be.
Yeah.
It's because employers aren't willing to accommodate. And so when there's also a lot of research that when people with disabilities go into entrepreneurial endeavors, they have a higher level of self-efficacy,
Mhm.
which impacts not only their finances and their business, but it impacts their health positively too.
Yeah.
Right. And so I've been able to create a business that works with my life. Like I had my infusion yesterday. I took the
Mhm.
day off. I answered some emails first thing in the morning. I did a few things in the afternoon, but other than that, it's infusion day.
Yeah.
And, you know, I have physical therapy every week. I have a personal trainer I see every week to regain strength. So I can fit all of that in because I'm in control of my schedule.
Mhm.
And so once I got to a point where I had sort of figured out a lot of the how-to business stuff,
Yep.
I said, okay, let's see if we can guide some other people through this.
Sure. So what is like your process of, let's say, well, I have a daughter, she's 22, and so she just aged out of the school system
Yeah.
last fall. So kind of the direction that we were only one we were really after was like day programs, but those all have like wait lists. So I mean, and there's no talk about like her starting her own business, anything that like that. So like, let's say if we were to come to you with my daughter, like what kind of process do they go through to help try to figure out what type of business would work for her or she'd be interested in?
So the first step, and this comes right out of Gary's study, right? The
Yep.
first step is just an awareness of what's available,
Right.
and that includes looking at their strengths, right? And it's just like inclusive education, we build off of strengths.
Right. Yep.
So we're looking at strengths first, and what are you good at? What do you enjoy doing?
Yeah.
And that for me, that's writing, right? The
Mhm.
reason I chose writing is not because I have dreams of being the best author in the world. The reason and I'm a good writer. I have a book coming out this year, but I chose writing because I'm good at it and I'm fast at it, and a lot of people hate doing it. That's it.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So something you're good at, something that's relatively easy for you. And if you can find something that has those two that other people don't love to do,
Right.
that's a sweet spot.
Yeah.
Right. And then we look at, I call them non-negotiables. And so for me, that's putting my kids on the bus in the morning. That's making it to my physical therapy appointments every week. That's having my uninterrupted infusion days. That's my personal training appointments. And so what is it that's non-negotiable for your health and well-being?
Mhm.
Right. My new physical therapist just said she wants me laying down for 30 minutes every afternoon. And I said, okay, now that gets added to my non-negotiable
There
list,
you
right?
go.
So we're looking at strengths, then we're looking at non-negotiables. And then how much time do you actually have to put into this?
Right.
When I first started, I had about 5 hours a week that I could work. And
Mhm.
now I'm working somewhere between 20 and 30 hours a week most weeks. I can put in more hours, but I don't usually have to or need to.
Right.
Um, and so then we're looking at, okay, what businesses, what's out in the marketplace that matches your strengths, things
Mhm.
you like to do, things maybe other people don't like, that fit in the scope of your non-negotiables.
Mhm.
Right? Because if you're someone that needs lots of rest during the day, we're not picking something where you have to stand
Right.
and be
Yeah.
active all day long, right? And then we look at the marketplace and say, okay, what's working? Right?
Right.
And so at that point in my experience, that's when I connected with Nick Pavlidis, who is the owner of Authority Ghostwriting, the CEO of Podfest. He has a mentorship coaching program, and I joined that, and I said, okay, teach me the things.
Mhm.
right? And so once we identify what it is they want to tackle, then
Sure.
we're finding the right people to help them.
Yeah.
Because if someone has already built a successful bookkeeping business or a successful ghostwriting business or graphic design business, we don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah.
We can just look at what they're doing and follow
Right.
the map.
Yeah.
And so at that point, we're working on what does a business plan look like?
Mhm.
And we're doing it with mentorship and support. And one of the things we do is when we have someone that we're partnering with through the nonprofit, one of our mentors or coaches that we partner with, a lot of these people are giving us steep discounts on their coaching services because
Mhm.
they're helping out people in the nonprofit, which we really appreciate. But one of the things that they're getting is they're getting feedback on how to make their practices more inclusive,
Sure. Yeah. That's good.
right? Because there is a difference when you're working with entrepreneurs with disabilities.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it improves their practice as well. Um, and then once we have that business plan in place, it's about execution and marketing.
Mhm.
And again, there's more coaching involved there. I do a lot of mindset coaching. Like, can I really do this? Am I actually capable of this?
Right.
Um, we're working on partnering with some university intern programs right now so that we have
Mhm.
interns to help our entrepreneurs with things like social media marketing and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we're getting some of those partnerships together right now. But I also say we're sort of building the plane while flying it, right?
Yeah.
The nonprofit is new. We got a grant. We're doing great. I'm very happy about how things are going, but we're definitely building the plane while flying it. And like, it's probably missing a wing and parts of the engine, and we're going to pick them up as we go and try
Yeah.
and tack them on. And so eventually we'll have a super cohesive program that works really well. But right now we're sort of pulling pieces.
Yeah.
We've got some online courses, but we're working on building a whole cache of online courses that are accessible for folks with disabilities. So building and flying.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that there's mindset piece to it too. Just because, from my experience with my daughter, I mean, just because she's has this label in the special education world, like the expectations that are around that are, I mean, like super low. So there's not a lot. I mean, I don't think people have told her like flat out, like, you're not going to be able to do anything. It's just, I mean, me as a parent, just going to meetings and just seeing like what the expectations are for her, they're super low. So I can see where like the mindset piece would be very vital. Like hearing that you can do this, you don't have to go down this path of what this is not the only path, different things like that would be a huge part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I think I know what a ghostwriter is, but is that just like where I want to write a book and then you kind of do most of the writing for it? Is that what it is? Or can you
Yeah.
explain a little bit
So
more?
um the short answer is it's like acting and writing at the same time.
Okay.
And so if I were writing your book, Aaron, I would learn you and I would learn um how you talk about your expertise.
Sure.
Um I would listen to a lot of your stories. I would probably listen to all of your podcast episodes,
Yeah.
right? And I would just immerse myself in your world. And then we'd work together to plan the outline for the book. I'll take the content you already have, plug it in where it goes, but then I'll interview you to fill in the gaps.
Okay.
And then, yeah, me and my team and I take all of that information and
Sure.
use it to craft the chapters of the book for you.
Cool.
And then we do have a lot of authors that we do some coaching as well. So if you want to write your book, but you want someone to
Sure.
hold your hand, hold you accountable, make sure you put the butt in the seat and do the doing, then we'll help you with that. And we have a co-writing program as well, where if you have a first draft, but you're not sure what to do with it after that, we'll help you get it over the finish line.
That's awesome. Do you feel that your disability has given you any specific insights or skills that have made you a better storyteller?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I am much better at finding the hidden meaning in things people say. And
Okay.
so if I'm writing your book and I'm interviewing you and I can tell you're holding something back from my questioning,
Hmm.
I will straight up say, I sense you're holding back on this. Is there a reason? And the reason I ask that question is not because I want to air all your dirty laundry in the book, but it's helpful for me as the writer to know what it is you're holding back, because I need to make sure that the emotion is in the text. And so it's made me much more aware of how to read between the lines. And it's made me much better at ensuring we have that emotional piece in every story.
Interesting. These things that comes from just your experience you've gone through, like somehow that made you notice that better.
Yeah, I mean, so
Who's your?
when I got the letter from the teachers retirement board that
Hmm.
stated, you're medically retired and your license isn't valid any longer, so on and so forth. I was sitting on the couch and the walker was in front of me, and my husband said, he's like, "It's okay, you're gonna figure this out." And I remember, like, I kicked the walker over like I was a toddler throwing a temper tantrum, right?
Hmm.
And I said, "But I'm not good at anything else." Which is the silliest statement ever,
Hmm.
right? I mean, like, I like to say that teachers are the best marketers in the world, because if you can convince a seventh grader that algebra is important, you can convince anyone of anything. But
Sure.
there's truth to that, right? And
Right.
but it's seeing your skills in a different way.
Yeah.
And so the act of sort of losing my entire career, which for teachers, your identity is tied to that.
Yep.
I know for a lot of other people too. So losing all of that and then having to figure out, okay, wait, who am I actually? Like, it's that getting quiet and like,
Hmm.
what am I when my roles are stripped away?
Right.
And then sort of that rebuilding of myself. It's like I became a professional pivoter.
Right.
Like, oh, this isn't working anymore. Okay, let's try this. Okay, that's not working. Let's try this.
Yeah.
And that, yeah, that does make me a better storyteller.
Yeah.
But it also makes me really good at what I do with the nonprofit.
Yeah. That is interesting how you say, like, I mean, like you said, your career was wrapped up in teaching, and that's kind of how you view yourself. I mean, I've had not exactly the same thing that happened to you happen to me, but other things in my life where it's caused me to like look at the big picture. I'm like, yep, that's not how I need to be forever, and this is I can't. Something's happening. I can't change it. I need to just go forward. And then once you realize that, wow, my life isn't just all that. It can be different. Then it kind of opens up a new world. So that makes a lot of sense to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, your life could be different tomorrow.
Yeah.
You just have
Oh
to
yeah. For
decide
sure.
that it's
Yep.
going to be.
Right. But yeah, sometimes we make the choice to change stuff. Sometimes it kind of happens to us, and then we're like, oh, we don't have that much of it. We have a choice still. What we end up doing is just that we have to look at stuff and figure it out.
Yeah, I was so I have a book that's being published by Morgan James Publishing with the same mission as the nonprofit.
Yeah.
And the title right now is Part-Time Entrepreneur, but I don't love it. I'm working on changing it. I have a whole document where I'm working on
Yeah.
name ideas. Anyway, so I wrote the entire first draft. And then as I was rereading it, I was like, oh, wait, we need to do the work before the work. I can't just jump into teaching people how to start a business when you have a disability, because before you can do that, you have to acknowledge that what happened to you sucks and it's not fair and it's stupid, right? And you have to acknowledge that
Right.
and come to terms with it. And you have to be like, okay, yeah, it stinks. I shouldn't be in this position. Nobody should be paralyzed at 36. Okay?
Right.
Shouldn't happen. But I am here. And you have to come to accept that before you can move on and do anything else.
Right. Yeah.
And so I had to add that section. So
Yep.
that's the work before the work. Acknowledge that it stinks.
Right.
Learn to deal with it, and then decide that you're going to do something anyway.
Yeah. What's been the biggest lesson you've learned from balancing a demanding career with the realities of living with a disability?
Rest. So my poor husband, when I was teaching in the before times, as I like to say, we'd, come home from work at the end of the day, both of us, and I'd be bopping around doing things with the kids, and he'd come home from work and he'd say, I just need 20 minutes. And he'd go and he'd take a nap. And I was so mad that he thought he got to take a nap. Right? And so I do things like angry clean in the room he was trying to nap in. Which did not matter because he can nap through anything, right? He's former military. He's a nap champion. But I would do that. And getting sick was like this realization, like, oh, it's not, have I worked hard enough to earn the rest?
Yeah.
It's, have I rested enough to be able to do the work?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that is a complete mind shift.
Right.
So you don't have to earn rest. You get to rest because you're human.
Yeah.
And the question is never, have I gotten enough done so that I deserve a break? It's, have I rested enough so I can get the work done?
Yeah. Yeah. Last summer I started, we have a lake near our house. So I would just, in the summertime, if it was nice out, I'd grab my fishing pole, go fishing for a little bit. And at first it was like, yeah, man, I have to be working. I gotta be working. And then I realized, like, if I go fishing for like 15 minutes, then I'm like way more recharged and get more stuff done when I come back from it. So it's just those little things we're taught, like you have to work. And like, nope, sometimes you need to take a break so you're able to like focus and get work done. So that makes,
Yeah. Mandatory naps.
There you go. Well, now you're told you had to lay down for 30 minutes. So now
I have to. It's the rule.
What is one tip you can share to help our listeners be more inclusive today? So just one thing anybody can do today to start being inclusive.
One thing that you can do today to start being more inclusive. Listen more. People with disabilities, even if they can't articulate it exactly, they know what they need in order to be able to function. And this is true for people with like slight neurodivergence. My son has ADHD, and he will say, I have homework to do, but before I do it, I really just need to go for a walk.
Right.
Or he'll say, I did a lot of peopling today. I need to be alone.
Yeah.
People know what they need. They might be afraid to ask for it. They might be afraid to say what they need because they're afraid of the backlash. And the backlash is real, especially in the employment areas.
Yep.
Okay. People get fired because of disabilities. People aren't hired because they have disabilities, even though there are supposed to be laws protecting them.
Yep.
Okay. And so if you listen more, you'll be able to help figure out what it is they need in order to be successful.
Yeah, that's great. Where's the best place people can connect with you?
So I am on social media channels in 3 different ways. My name, Maria Chapman, Connected Ghostwriting LLC, and Journey to Success Project. My websites are connectedghostwriting.com and journeytosuccess.org. And I am also on LinkedIn, so you can find me there.
Awesome. Ready for the last question?
Oh, I don't know.
Probably not, but
let's go. Maybe I need to rest.
Do you like spam lunch meat? Yes or no?
Absolutely not.
Wow, that's fast. So yeah, I live in Austin, Minnesota, where they make spam and where the spam museum is located. So I ask all my guests if they like spam, just to be curious. And it's usually that. It's usually a very fast yes or a very fast no. There's usually not a lot of hesitation.
No hesitation. No, thank you.
No, thank you. That's great. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you, Aaron.
Yeah. To those listening, thank you for allowing me to be part of your journey. It is truly an honor. Please join the podcast newsletter by clicking on the link in the episode description to keep up with the latest episodes. Together, we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion for inclusion.